Hey everyone, I'm Mrs. Sibley,
And I'm Mrs. Lamb.
and this is Let's Get Lit. Today we're going to be talking about character traits and personality traits, but we're going to start with a joke so you don't look like you want to die in class. Mrs. Lamb, what is the best cure for a dog with a fever?
What?
Mustard. It's the best thing for a hot dog. We know you guys like that one. You know I love dogs. Shout out to Jax. All right, so let's talk about this for a second. When we talk about personality traits, we really just scrape the surface sometimes, but it actually goes a lot deeper than that.
Right. And sometimes you think one thing about a character or person, and then the more you get to know them, you change your mind about how they are.
Absolutely, and that's how first impressions are developed and changed. You might have a first impression about someone, and some of those things might hold true throughout the duration that you know that person, while others might evolve or change depending on what that person experiences.
Right. So for this one, if we're doing a conference and we're talking about character, we're going to have a conference about Jay from Serial. You all heard Serial, I hope. You all remember Jay. So we're going to talk about what we thought of Jay throughout. So I'll play the teacher in this one and ask you questions about Jay.
Sounds good.
And then you can explain.
You guys all know how I feel about this.
And me too. All right, so listening to Serial, when you first heard Jay's interview and you heard him speaking to the police, tell me what you thought about Jay.
So my immediate reaction was that I did think he was shady, but he also came across as very sort of like unsure and like didn't know what he wanted to say and like didn't really plan things out ahead of time. Like he was just kind of speaking. And I thought he was a little bit off, but then I also thought, well, there's no way. I didn't know. I was very confused by him because he's super conflicting. He comes off as shady, but then you're like, well, wait a second. How could he make up a story knowing all of these things?
Right, so at first he seems like someone you can't trust, but then,
Well, and then you start to think, well, how would he know this? And you start to realize, like, that is actually really clever and, like, really smart and really manipulative. Like, to be able to come up with this elaborate story and all these details and convince people to believe you. I didn't think that he was capable of that at first. I was just like, oh, look at this, like, rookie guy, who's on an interview with the police. And then I'm like, this is kind of like mastermind manipulation.
so you started thinking one way about him, thinking that he was just kind of shady and making things up, but then later began to see he was more clever and manipulative.
Absolutely. And I know you use the word deceptive. I think
Right.
that that's a really good word to use. Hold on. All right, we're back. I think deceptive is a really good word to use because I think that that is the best word, because sometimes you don't have the best word and you're like, wait, what word is this that fits this person?
Right.
And deceptive is the word, because after you start to hear the 4 different interviews, they're so conflicting that you realize even if he was telling the truth, the first time or the 4th time, he's still deceptive because he changed so many times.
Right, it's not just a question of forgetting. It's
No.
a question of making purposeful changes.
Absolutely.
So if we talk about the idea of the Patapsco State Park lie, we drove out to Patapsco State Park, we smoked a blunt, and then by the trial, they never go to Patapsco.
That's what I find so puzzling, because for me, I might forget like specific times. I can understand if the timing is a little bit off, but completely eliminating doing something, I don't know how you forget something that significant.
Right.
It's like it was completely wiped away that you ran this errand that day or that you did this day.
Right.
And if he was involved in a murder, you would remember that. You'd remember that day. It'd be ingrained in your mind.
Right. So if you're thinking about that particular lie, why do you think he told that lie?
I think
Or got rid of that story?
I think he got rid of that story because it didn't fit his agenda, which leads back to him being deceptive. So this is now confirmed for me after this pattern of behavior that he is a deceptive person. It's not that he did one thing that was deceptive one time. If I were to be deceptive one time in my life, or if something were to happen, you should be wondering, what are that person's motivations? Why are they doing that? Why are they acting out of character?
Right. But for him, as you see, it's not, when we're talking about character traits, and you guys can use your toolkits for this, Ms. Sibley and I referred to our toolkits for this one, is looking at a pattern of behavior.
Absolutely.
Right? So what we learn is we listen to the first interview, it seems like he's maybe not being truthful, but we don't know. Is he nervous?
Yeah,
Like,
you
what's
can't
going
confirm
on?
that yet. Yeah.
But then as we continue to listen to him, we recognize a pattern. And in all 4 interview, trial, episode, all of that stuff that we listen to, he's telling different kinds of lies that serve different kinds of purposes.
Absolutely. And when something presents itself as a pattern, then it can start to evolve into a trait. And that's what you really want to look out for when you're analyzing a character.
Right. And if there is something that seems unusual, so Jay comes up and finally tells us a story that pans out is true, what is his motivation?
Mm-hmm.
And then what does that motivation tell us about him as well? Because
Absolutely.
sometimes characters acting differently than we expect can tell us a little bit about who they are, like how they deal with adversity or pressure or that
Anger,
kind of thing.
all
Anger
different
issues
things.
like that.
Yes. So thanks for watching. This was, again, a really authentic way of analyzing character, and we hope that you practice this too.